Right. All right. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله Ramadan Mubarak to each and every one of you. Inshallah, every Friday at 1 p.m. we'll do a session on the fiqh of fasting and zakah. I know, of course, in this time we all have questions pertaining to the month of Ramadan, and many of us like to give their zakah during this month in order to get the extra reward that this month has generously offers us. So inshallah, feel free to ask questions via the platform in which you are viewing the content. You can simply write a comment. Inshallah, I'll be watching, keep my eye out on each and every, on Facebook and YouTube as well. So do ask questions, engage me, inshallah, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow this to be a fruitful session with barakah and reward, inshallah. So, bismillah. What I want to start with before diving into the actual ahkam, the rulings of fiqh, the fiqh rulings of Ramadan, is to talk about something that I'm sure many of us, because of the particular situation that we are in, we have questions about. And that is that which pertains to Salat al-Tarawih. Can we pray Tarawih at home? What are the rules? Among these lines. So Tarawih is a sunnah, and the evidence for that is that the Prophet ﷺ prayed it 3 times in his lifetime, and the companions followed him in that. And then the Prophet ﷺ in the 3rd or 4th day stopped coming out. He stopped praying it because he was afraid that if he continued to pray, it would become an obligation, and then the believers would not be able to keep up with that. And of course, if Tarawih was an obligation upon us, that would be quite difficult, as we can imagine. So that is the evidence that it is a sunnah. The companions continued to pray Tarawih after the life of the Prophet ﷺ. That further corroborates the position that it is a sunnah. And during the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu an and part of the Khilafah of Umar radiallahu an, the companions did not pray it as one group, rather they prayed it as different separate groups. But what was happening was when Group A, the Imam of Group A says, for example, Allahu Akbar, he does the takbir, the Group B would think that it's their Imam and they would follow the Imam of Group A instead of their own Imam. So Umar radiallahu an decided to have one salah Tarawih for the entire community, and that was led by Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu ta'ala an. So that is the evidence that it is a sunnah. But from this we take 2 things: that Tarawih is better, it is better to be performed as one community in the masjid. And the evidence for that is the action of Umar radiallahu an. And why that makes it preferable is that the Prophet ﷺ in an authentic hadith says that he tells us to follow the Khulafa al-Rashidin al-Mahdiyin min ba'di, to follow the rightly guided Khulafa after him. And we know for sure that they are Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhum jami'an. So their actions, they are not evidence in of themselves. Okay, let's make that a point. It's not just because Umar radiallahu anh did something does not make it an evidence in of itself, but because his action is built off his understanding of the sunnah, it is something that we look into and we see as something to follow. Okay, so that's why it's preferable that we pray in the masjid as one group, one community. However, if that's not possible, then Tarawih can also be prayed at home, either as a group, the family praying together, or as an individual. Tarawih does not have to be in a group, just like the obligatory prayers don't have to be in a group. Definitely, it's preferable that it's in a congregation, but it's not a condition to the validity of the Salat Tarawih itself. So pray Tarawih at home, you get the reward of doing the Sunnah of Tarawih. How many rak'ahs is it? Now, the scholars differed upon that. The common opinion is that it's 20. Inshallah, the stronger opinion is that the Prophet ﷺ prayed, he would pray a total of 11 rak'ahs, 8 Taraweeh and then 3 witr. That's 11. And that was his very common practice that he would do at nighttime alone, and even during Ramadan, during his i'tikaf. So 11, which we would normally do in OCIF, that is a sunnah. However, 20, of course, is also something that is acceptable. It is what's believed to have been done during the time of the khulafa, the rightly guided caliphs. So whichever opinion you take, that is good, inshallah, barakah. And there's reward in each sujood that you do and each rakah that you do. For some of us, they have a good amount of Quran memorized. So they can recite by themselves, no problem. Some of us, however, we know how to read from the Mus'haf, we know how to read from the Quran, but we don't have much memorized. And for some of us, we don't know how to read, nor do we know how to recite. So how do we deal with each situation? The first situation, someone who has a lot of Quran memorized, then that's simple. They just recite what they want, and they can repeat themselves, no problem. So let's say, for example, they have 10 juzu memorized, and they read 1 juzu a night. So by the time they finish 10 nights of Ramadan, they'll be done with what they have memorized. They can go ahead and start over again, no problem. For the second example, someone who can read from the Mus'haf, they can read from the Quran, but they don't have much memorized, or even for the first person who can read, but doesn't have the entire Quran memorized, and then there's no fault, there's no problem with reading from the Mus'haf itself. To have the Quran in your hands, on a podium in front of you, or even your phone. That's simpler. You can have your phone out with the Quran app open, and you can recite to it. And the evidence that this is permissible is that there's nothing in that process or in that action that nullifies prayer itself. So some scholars, or in fact all scholars, said that movement can nullify prayer, but then they differed upon how much movement will lead to the nullification of prayer. Abu Hanifa is the most strict. He says 3 successive actions that are outside of the actions of salah nullifies prayer. Others are a little bit more lenient, and the opinion I normally teach is that it's not about how much movement you're doing, but rather if it's so much so, the person's doing so much movement that if some random person were to walk by and see that person, they wouldn't think that they're praying. So someone who's kind of jittering and doing weird things like that, that's what nullifies prayer. And regardless of what opinion you follow, none of them, Allah Ta'ala alam, none of them will find moving the page, flipping the page, or moving the screen is enough movement to nullify prayer. So inshallah, there's good in that, and go ahead and do that. Now, so that's someone who can read from the Mus'haf but doesn't have much memorized, or someone who has a lot memorized but not all of it and would like to read from the Mus'haf, no problem. Now, the third category of people are those who can't read from the Quran and don't have much memorized. Maybe they have Surah Al-Fatiha and some of the very short chapters, or maybe a newer Muslim to Islam, or a newer practicing Muslim who doesn't have, more than Surah Al-Fatiha, or even they might not have Surah Al-Fatiha memorized. For people who are very recently coming into Islam, how can they perform Taraweeh? It can be performed. And the Sharia is very flexible and lenient in this regard. And there's always an opportunity to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the best manners, in the best way. So for someone who has a little bit of the Quran memorized, maybe Surah Al-Ikhlas, the last 3 chapters of the Quran, the very short chapters, just go ahead and read those. If you want to read them all in 1 rak'ah, every rak'ah, that's perfectly fine. If you want to read 1 chapter every rak'ah, and then just when you're finished with it, you start over again. That's perfectly fine, and there's a lot of good in that. One of the companions, it said that he, in every rak'ah, he would recite Surah Al-Ikhlas. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. So the companions found that strange, and they went to the Prophet ﷺ and told him, this person reads the same chapter over and over again. So why don't you talk to him? Is that okay? So he called that companion, and the Prophet ﷺ asked him, why are you doing this? It was said to me that you do this, you read Surah Al-Ikhlas every rak'ah, and I'd like to know why you do that. And he said, Ya Rasulullah, I love the chapter. I love it so much. So I always read it. It's just near and dear to my heart. So the Prophet ﷺ, praised him for that. So there's good in reciting even very little, and in it is reward, inshallah. And for those who struggle in reciting the Quran, then remember the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ says, the one who reads the Quran and it's difficult for them to read it, then they get twice the reward of the recitation and the reward of their patience and their struggle. For someone who is stronger in Quranic recitation, then the Prophet ﷺ described them as being being in the company of al-kiram al-barara, the angels. So do not feel down. Do not feel like you cannot do much and therefore you shouldn't. There's always reward in what you do, and your struggle and your limitations are also rewarded for if you are patient with them. So keep that in mind. Now, when it comes to actual salah, right? Now, salah is something that is meant to bring us closer to Allah, to increase our iman, to soften our hearts. Now, for someone who understands the Quran, has deeper knowledge of what's being said, then the Quran and the verses can really exacerbate and really bring out the iman in the person's heart and build it. For someone who, whether they can read the Mus'haf but they don't understand, or they can't and they don't have much memorized, there's something also very important that you can do to increase your iman, and that is the dhikr that we do in the various positions of salah, as well as the dua in sujood. So as you know, when we do ruku', we say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. When we do sujood, we say Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. Sorry, the lights went out. Anyway, so during sujood, we say Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. Between the two sujood, we say Rabbi ghfirli, etc. Really contemplate upon that. These positions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them part of salah because they build our iman. They build our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you are doing ruku', remember what you are saying. You are saying glory to the one who is the greatest. Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. And subhanallah, the phrase subhanallah means, just to be kind of concise here, it means I distance Allah from any and all imperfections. Anything that is not worthy or befitting of Allah, then I distance him from all of that. And then you kind of corroborate that with one of Allah's names, Al-Azim, the glorious, the great, the greatest of the great, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So really reflect on that. And bowing is a position of glorifying and revering and exalting something or someone. So when we're in ruku', remember this, reflect upon it, remember the realities there, and that helps build iman. And then same thing for sujood, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. I distance Allah from all perfections, the one who is al-A'la, the highest, another name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is also very powerful, but we need to reflect upon it. When we are in sujood, this is the lowest physical position we can possibly be in, because our head is now it's now lower to the earth, closer to the ground than our own behinds. So in that, it kind of builds this idea, look how much I am humbling myself for Allah. And think about what it means, what it represents. Would you do that for anyone else? Is there anyone else? Think of the most beloved person to you. Is there anyone else on this earth, whether they are alive now or are currently or have passed on, that you would be willing to prostrate your head for. But we do that for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala multiple times, several times a day. Reflect upon this, and also reflect, as you are now in the lowest physical position, you are praising the one who is the highest subhanahu wa ta'ala. But despite that distance in terms of physical space, it is in that position the Prophet ﷺ says that we are closest to Allah, to remind us that it's not about the space, right? It's not about how physically close you are to someone or something or to Allah, but rather the state of the heart. That is what brings someone closer to Allah or causes them to become further distant from Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So reflect upon this and utilize that time to make a lot of dua. You see, we tend to focus on one of the benefits of dua, and that is our request being answered. But there's another element of dua that we tend to forget. So during Ramadan, really focus on the second one. As you do the first one, focus and let the center be on this second idea. And that is to remember what dua indicates. What does it mean? What it means is Allah the highest, the King of Kings, is giving you direct access to Him in a way that He is spoiling you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in this month, we know of the hadith, many hadith that talk about how Allah, loves His believers. What are my believers doing? They're fasting. They have left their food and their drink and their pleasures for my sake. They are, going through fatigue, and they are taking on this challenge despite the hot weather, despite the circumstances, and they are doing this out of love for me, out of loyalty to me. Ask me what you want. Allah is spoiling us. In the last third of the night, He says, who amongst you is seeking forgiveness that I forgive him or her? Who has a request for me to answer? Who has a dua for me to fulfill? So remember, Allah is spoiling you. Allah is giving you direct access to Him. And if you can focus on this and really think about it, and let your heart do the talking. Put your mind on the side during these moments. Let your heart do the talking. Because when you feel that your heart is now addressing and reaching out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, it gives us that sense of solace, that nearness. We feel near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this helps build an awareness of Allah, that He is close and near to us. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the context of Ramadan, if my servant asks about me, then tell them I am near to them. I answer the dua of those who call upon me. So there is a relationship, a very strong relationship between making dua and feeling Allah's nearness, feeling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's presence. So engage Allah in that manner, and that will help build your iman. So if you can't do much when it comes to recitation, you can't build your iman through contemplating the Quran, then focus on these other parts of salah. This way, every person, no matter their situation, despite their circumstances, despite their capabilities, they always have direct access to tools of building iman. So those are some fiqh issues that in regards to prayer and how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during these times. Now, let me go ahead before I kind of go through the outline of Ramadan fiqh issues. Let me address the common questions, and that is, do eye drops, ear drops break fast? If I take a shot, does that break my fast? When it comes to someone who cannot fast anymore, or a lady who is pregnant or nursing, what can we do in all these situations? So let me start off with these. When it comes to that which breaks fast, breaking fast has nothing to do with what a person is consuming. In other words, breaking fast isn't conditional to food, for example, eating food or drinking water. Rather, any substance that enters one of the entering points of the body, that is what breaks fast, even if it's not something that's edible, like dirt or a bug or smoking, for example. So any substance in any of its form, whether it's a solid, a gas, or a liquid, right, then that is something that breaks fast. But the question is, where does it have to enter the body from? Now, there are 6 possible entrances to the body, or there are 6 entrances to the body: the mouth and the nose, the eyes and the ears, and the front genital and the back, right? So number 1 and number 2, the front and the back, where a person urinates from and where they defecate from. These are the 6 entrances to the body. Now, the scholars agreed upon 2. There's ijma', there's consensus upon 2, and that is the mouth and the nose, right? The mouth, obviously, because that's where we eat and we drink. And the verses of Surah of Ramadan and Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. So eat and drink until the Fajr appears in the horizon. How does a person eat and drink? With their mouth. So that is the evidence that anything that is consumed or enters the mouth in one of these 3 states, solid, a liquid, or a gas, then it breaks fast. What about the nose? The nose, based on the authentic hadith, in which the Prophet ﷺ says, بَالِغُوا بِالْإِسْتِنْشَاقِ إِلَّا أَن تَكُونُوا صَائِمِينَ. When you do istinshaq in wudu, when you put water in your nose, the Prophet ﷺ says, بَالِغُوا فِي, do it excessively, to where it doesn't, to the point where it doesn't damage a person's, health. Or if they have, for example, sinuses or a nerve that it hits, then don't worry about that. But he says that do that in wudu, except if you are fasting. Meaning, when you are fasting, don't excessively inhale water through the nose. Okay, do it very, very slightly, very weakly. Put it in a little bit and then let it out. Do not do that sucking in from the nose. Okay, so that's the evidence that what enters from the nose breaks fast, based on this hadith. And from this, the scholars are in unanimous opinion that these 2 entrances to the body breaks fast. Now, when it comes to the eyes and the ears, the front and the back, the urinal tract and the place of the place for defecation, the scholars differed. The opinion I have chosen based on my teacher, is that none of these other 4 break fast. So something that enters the eye or the ear, or number 1 or number 2, does not break fast, even if it's something that is good for your health, even if it's something that nourishes the body, right? So if someone were to take, for example, some sort of IV or skin, that's another thing. Now notice, I'll leave that for a second. Okay, so going back to these 4, taking eye drops, ear drops, a suppository does not break fast. So don't worry about these things. Now, what you notice is that the scholars mentioned 6. And of these 6, they didn't mention the skin. Something that enters the body through the skin is not even considered in these masail, right? In these issues of breaking fast. So what enters the body through the skin, whether it's through, for example, a patch, like a nicotine patch, or a shot, like an IV, or some sort of blood shot, or whatever, some medicine, insulin, for example, that doesn't break fast. Likewise, if someone were to soak their feet in water with a certain remedy, and that doesn't break fast. And the scholars were asked about this before. There was a certain illness where the remedy was putting some sort of herbal mixture in water and putting the person's feet in water. And in that process, the person going through this, who has their feet in the water, would taste the remedy in their throat, right? They would taste it in the throat. So they asked about this. They asked the scholars about, does this break fast? And the scholars said, no, it doesn't break fast. Why? Because what enters the skin is not considered a tract to the body, okay, in terms of fasting. So if you take a shot, no problem. You need to take a blood test, no problem. Now, when it comes to going through to the dentist, now I don't know if dentists are providing normal cleaning, regular cleaning, but that would break fast because they're spraying the water in your mouth, and it's impossible to fully spit out everything. So that's not allowed. Postpone your regular dental cleanings to after Ramadan, unless there's some sort of emergency, some sort of need. For example, someone needs a root canal and there's a lot of pain. That person is considered to be ill, and they can break fast on that day to take care of that, no problem, because they are someone who is in a state of illness. Now, okay, so when it comes to going back to what enters the skin, When it comes to people who are diabetic, now I'm not fully aware of the forms of diabetes. I know there's type A and type B, or type 1 and type 2, and how that works. For some people, it's not that they need food, but they need the insulin shot. They can fast, but they need the insulin shot. What do? Go ahead and take that shot and fast. Okay, that doesn't break fast. But someone who's diabetic, where they have to eat at a certain time, then they have to, then they can go ahead and break fast. And that leads us to the next issue, and that is someone who is breaking fast for a reason. Do they have to pay the fidya? Do they have to make the payment to pay, or how do they make up for the fast? There are two categories here. A person who is breaking their fast because of a temporary illness or a temporary situation, such as pregnancy or nursing, but can later on make up their fast. Those people need to make up their fast, right? They can't pay and say, okay, I paid and that's it. And I know for some sisters, not as common now, but in the previous generations, a woman would get pregnant, have her baby, breastfeed for 2 years, and then she'd get pregnant again, and then breastfeed, and she'd get pregnant again and breastfeed, and she would go 8, 9, 10 Ramadans without fasting. Does she need to make them up? Yes. If she has the physical capability to make up the fasting, she has to make up the fasting, right? It might sound like a lot. So 10 years, let's say that's 290 days. How does she make up 290 days? It's actually simpler than a person might expect. And that is by distributing it throughout the year. If the person can fast 2 times a week, so Mondays and Thursdays, that's 8 a month. So that's about 96 a year. She'll be done with it in about 3 years. If she can't do that much, we'll do 4 in a month or 3 in a month. But with time, it'll add up, it'll accumulate, and inshallah, she will get through it. So, but she has to make up the fast. That's the first category. Their illness or their situation is temporary. Afterwards, they can make up the fast. The second category are those whose illness or situation is not temporary, it's permanent, such as someone who's diabetic, old age, etc. These are the people who pay the fidya. They pay the fidya every day. They pay around $12 for people in our area today. So they pay $12 a day, depending on the month of Ramadan, whether it's 29 days or 30 days, that will differ. So you're talking about around $120. 360 a month per Ramadan. So that's how it is there. Okay, are there any questions? I haven't seen any questions yet. I hope I've been clear enough. One question is when it comes to someone who's eating suhoor, and then the adhan enters, the time for adhan enters for fajr. Do they have to spit out the food? In this regard, if what's in the mouth when the time of adhan hits, they can swallow that. They cannot put more in. Sometimes you find these strange opinions where you can eat for 2 or 3 minutes more, or because the timing is off and these calculations are wrong, you have more time. Don't listen to any of that. Whether it's when to start your fast or when to break it. I mean, people who say this, they're very irresponsible. Go to the beach. For example, those of us who are in SoCal, go to the beach. You can see the horizon, and time Maghrib prayer. You'll find it's almost exactly on point. I mean, these calculations are very precise, and I've done this multiple times. So follow what's in the Ramadan calendar and follow it based on that. Now, sometimes you have some calendars that the imsak is a lot before, maybe 30 minutes before other calendars. What I recommend is following your local masjid. Okay, don't follow independent Ramadan calendars. Follow the calendars of your local masjid. So someone is eating suhoor, and the time for adhan enters, Fajr starts, go ahead and swallow what's in your mouth. Do not put more. Okay? Have fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and put your trust in Him. Don't play around with these ahkam, because if you mess up there, you have broken your fast. And that is, you have intentionally broken your fast. And that is a major sin, a major, major sin. And it's not about paying a fidya or making up the fast afterwards. It is about, there's a kafara for that, a much more severe kafara, expiation. And that is, you need to fast 60 days in place of that one day that the person broke their fast intentionally without a proper shari'i reason. So do be aware of that. Now, okay, so if there are no questions, we'll go ahead and stop there, inshallah. Any questions that you have, please do send them to me. You can send them via email. You can email me at Tarik, Tarik, @ocif.org. Or you can reach me through, if you have my phone number, you can go ahead and reach me, send me a message. That is the best way. It's harder for me to answer my phone now because of just the randomness of my schedule. So it's better that you leave me a message. If I should make this a point, if at any time you are unaware of whether you broke your fast or not, you're not aware, you did something happened, and you're not sure, did I break my fast or not, or is my fast invalidated or not? My recommendation, and I stress this and tell other people the same thing, do not break your fast. Do not go and eat until you get the fatwa, even if that means fasting the rest of the day and asking afterwards. Okay, what happens sometimes, someone does something that doesn't break their fast, but they think that their fast has been broken, and then they start eating and drinking. And now they intentionally broke their fast, even though it was valid beforehand. And now they have to do the severe expiation, and they can't just make up the fast. So do be aware of that. So inshallah, we'll stop there at 4 p.m. today. And every day during Ramadan, there's the Quranic Parables series. Please do join me in the same two social media platforms, Facebook and YouTube. So please do join me for Quranic Parables. Today we'll be going over the first two parables in Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 19 to 21. So join me then. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Wassalatu wassalam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.